Good afternoon, everyone. I am Joshua Thomas, a member of Alpha Phi Alpha, and I will be the moderator for the Florida 8th Judicial Circuit Group 12 Runoff Election Panel. These candidates will appear on the general election ballot. Welcome, candidates, and thank you for joining us today. The Florida Circuit Courts are trial courts of general jurisdiction. Circuit courts hear a wide variety of cases, including criminal felonies, family law matters, civil cases with more than $30,000 at issue, probate issues, juvenile cases, and appeals from county courts. The 8th Circuit includes Alachua, Baker, Bradford, Gilchrist, Levy, and Union counties. To be eligible for the office of circuit judge, a person must be a voter in a county within the circuit and must have been admitted to the practice of law in the state for the preceding 5 years. Circuit court judges are elected by the voters of the circuits in nonpartisan elections. Each group corresponds with a specific judgeship. Judges serve a 6-year term. These are your two candidates for Group 12 office: Sean Brewer and Abronsi Martin. Each candidate will have 1 minute for an opening statement. Following the opening statements, I will read questions prepared by the League of Women Voters. Each candidate will have 1.5 minutes to answer. There will be 3 questions asked of each candidate, and I'll rotate the order in which they respond by name alphabetically. After the questions have been answered, each candidate will then have 1 minute for a closing statement. The order of closing statements will be in the reverse order from the opening statements. You will be able to see the timer who will indicate your remaining time at 15 seconds and stop. Please stop when your time is up or your microphone may be muted. We will now listen to the candidates' opening statements, and you will each have a minute, starting with Sean Brewer.
I want to thank the League of Women Voters and the Bob Graham Center for having this and having Mr. Martin and I here to speak to you today. I want to tell you a little bit about myself. I'm Sean Brewer. I've lived in Gainesville since 1989. I went here at the University of Florida for undergraduate, master's, and law degree. What I like to say is the most important thing I did while I was here at the University of Florida was meet my wife, Laura Quisling, who grew up here in Gainesville. And she is a teacher, has been since 1996. She's a Title I teacher in town. As for myself, the specialty of my career has been prosecuting crimes against women and children. So these are your serious child abuse, sex abuse, domestic violence type cases. I've done that both in Levy County and in Alachua County. I've been the supervisor of that unit here in Alachua County. I was for over a decade. I've also tried multiple murder cases, both here and in Levy County. Those included domestic violence murders and child death cases. Thank you.
Thank you. Abronsi Martin, your statement, please.
Good afternoon, everyone. Once again, my name is Abronsi Martin, and I'm a candidate for Circuit Court Judge. I am very grateful to be here this afternoon because as a judicial candidate, we often struggle to kind of pierce through to the public because we don't have those traditional markers that people depend on to choose candidates. We don't wave a banner of Republican or Democrat. We can't make policy statements. Only thing we can do is tell you that we're going to be fair and impartial, tell you we're going to be true to the idea of justice. So how do you trust that we're going to do that? Well, you have to look at our background. Well, I've been here in Alachua County for 27 years. I've been an assistant public defender for 24. I'm married, have 3 children. I've served this community in a variety of capacities. I am currently a division chief at the Department of that Public Defender's Office. I'm a former president of the Bar Association, and I've been president of the board of directors for Big Brothers Big Sisters. I believe very strongly I have something to offer. I believe that, and I hope you believe it as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we will ask for each of your responses to 3 questions we have prepared. You will have 1.5 minutes to respond to each one. For the first question, we will begin with Abronsi Martin. Do judges have an obligation to improve public understanding of our courts? If so, how might you carry out that obligation?
Absolutely. There's so many things judges can't do, but at our core, we are the guardians of justice, I believe. And one of the problems that I've seen with the justice system is that the community, the public, doesn't trust that judges will uphold that. So I think every day we have to do things like come out to the community, talk about advancements in the law, talk about, be very transparent in their reasoning for any decisions that they make. Not bow to the will of what the majority says, because we always about what the law says first. But we should be transparent and explain why we made such a decision. In my opening statement, I said I have something to contribute. What I point out every time I come there, very few public defenders ever become judges. I think it's important to have professional diversity. Judges, when they are thinking about ideas, when they collaborate, they discuss things with others. And when we are meeting that objective of making sure the public believes that justice and equality are at the forefront, it is important that all ideas are represented. Focusing on the law, but all perspectives, all backgrounds are represented. And I think right now, there are very few representatives who have my particular background on the circuit court bench.
Thank you. Sean Brewer, your response, please.
Yes, absolutely. It's important that, and judges do have an obligation to improve public understanding of the court system. There are a variety of ways that we can do that. I was at a speaking engagement this morning. Mr. Martin is correct. There's very few things we're allowed to talk about. We're allowed to talk about our qualifications, and we're allowed to talk about the duties of the job. And at the speaking event I was at this morning, I must have spent 15, 20 minutes explaining what a circuit court judge does, how a circuit court judge is elected, when it's an election, when it's an appointment, what area it covers. I think that that's absolutely essential to the general public, so that the general public understands what's going on at the courthouse and has some faith of what's going on in the courthouse. How can we do that? We can speak at schools. We can speak at civic groups. We can speak at city hall meetings. We can speak at county meetings. We can speak to the general public, and we have both been speaking while we've been on this campaign, and I can tell you personally that that is a big part of what I've been doing, is talking to people and answering questions about how the judicial race works. Mr. Martin referred to the importance of having somebody with his background as a public defender in this position. I can tell you that the reason why it's important to have somebody who has been a prosecutor in this position, that is because our job as a prosecutor is not to represent one client, it's to seek justice. That's very similar to what the job is for a judge, and I think that's why you see so many people who have had a background as being a prosecutor moving on to the bench.
Thank you for your answer. For the second question, we will begin with Sean Brewer. In regards to hate crimes, what are some of the issues in balancing free speech rights against the need to control offensive activity?
Okay, so people have a right to free speech, even if it's speech that we don't like, okay? They don't have a right to use free speech, or to use hate speech, I should say, while committing a crime, and to have it be the impetus of that crime, okay? That is something that they absolutely have no right. When we talk about free speech, it is not unfettered free speech. You can't yell fire in a crowded theater, right? You cannot use hate speech as an impetus while you are committing a crime. I'll give you an example. If two people are fighting over a parking space, okay, and they're having this argument over the parking space, and they get into a fist fight, and during the fist fight, someone says something morally repulsive, okay, that may not be hate speech in a criminal sense. It's certainly hate speech. It may not be in a criminal sense. If two people meet in a parking lot and one person starts using hateful speech and uses that as a reason to attack that person, that's not something that's protected by free speech, and that is something that we can control by making an enhanced crime for that type of speech for the crime that was committed. And I've done that. I've prosecuted hate crimes. I've prosecuted hate crimes both in Ocala and here in Alachua County. And that's the difference between free speech and hate speech. Hate speech at any time is morally repugnant, and it is actionable in a criminal law when it is used as an impetus to commit the crime.
Thank you for your answer, Abrancy Martin.
So on this issue, one of the things when you keep in mind that the circuit court is a trial court. It's not an appellate court. It is the point of entry for all the cases that you hear about on the news. What the trial court is tasked with doing is determining the facts. And the law, as Mr. Brewer has pointed out, does draw a line between just behavior that people might not like and what constitute a racial or gender or ethnicity-based motivation. And so that's a fact question. And facts, this is where you kind of get into that gray area in which it requires judgment. It requires an individual to know what the rules are, have an understanding of what it's like to be, to some extent, in the shoes of each party. Not sympathy, but empathy, in which you are better able to address and assess the facts of a particular case and to make a ruling right there. So first step, you have to follow the law. The law is clear. It's been outlined by the United States Supreme Court, followed by the Florida Supreme Court. Then you apply the facts. So is how I would approach it.
Thank you for your answer. For the third and final question, we will begin with the Broncy Martin. What do you view as the biggest challenge to the courts here, and what would you do if you were elected to help address that challenge?
Well, I think the biggest challenge is something that I've been talking about throughout this campaign. The 8th Judicial Circuit is 6 different counties. There are about almost 300 square thousand miles. That encompasses the 6 counties. And each of those communities, they all look at the world a little bit differently. But there's been one thing that's been pretty consistent with it. For whatever reason, good, bad, or indifferent, there's a lack of trust in the judicial system. A lack of trust that the people who are invested with the responsibility and the authority are actually doing that job in a fair and impartial manner. And I've always said that it's important for somebody from my background to be a part of the circuit bench because it is rare. It is rare to see someone who has spent their entire career as an assistant public defender, representing indigent individuals, making sure, as I said in the Gainesville Sun article, breathing life into the words enshrined into the Declaration of Independence, that all men are created equal. When that is not present, the public doubts that the judges will be acting appropriate. I think my experience, my talent, will contribute to fostering the belief that justice will be served.
Thank you. Sean Brewer, your answer.
The biggest, there it is again. The biggest challenge to the courts is a perception that there is not impartiality. And that is discouraging because the most important thing about the court system is that it is fair and impartial. In fact, the only promise I've made throughout this entire campaign is that if I'm elected judge, I will be fair and impartial. So how do we combat that? How do we combat this public perception that there's a fix-in on cases, that things aren't fair and impartial? Well, I think one thing that we do is we encourage people to come and view court events. Court events are open to the public. Whether it's a criminal trial, whether it's a civil hearing, whatever it is, we need to encourage the public to come out and see that. We need to encourage the schools to have field trips where they come for a day to view court hearings. And I believe if we do that, what we're going to find is that the people are going to say, well, wait a second, it's not like what we see on sensational news. And I'm not attributing that to one side or the other. I'm just talking in general. It is a fair and impartial process. And these judges and these prosecutors and these public defenders that are working in this arena are working under that umbrella. So I think that the lack of perception of impartiality is the biggest challenge that we have, and I think we can address that by more education and certainly more openness and bringing more people in to watch our proceedings. Thank you.
Thank you. We will now move on to the closing statements, and each candidate will have 1 minute. We will hear the candidates' closing statements in the reverse order by both district and name from the opening statements. Broncy Martin, your closing statement, please.
Once again, thank you for the opportunity to be here. You know, whenever you stand up to say anything, whenever you stand up to offer yourself for public office, you should have something to contribute. I have been a trial lawyer for 24 years. I have served this community in various capacities for 24 years. I have, even before the notion of running for a judge came in my mind, I understood the importance of connecting to the community. Judges are often perceived and as above the fray, as being disconnected from the community. And I can tell you, although we have an obligation to truth and justice and impartiality, that is not what we are. We are servants of the community. I have experience doing that. I have the talent to do that. I have the commitment to do that. So on November 8th, I hope very sincerely that you vote for me, Bronzy Martin. Thank you.
Thank you. Sean Brewer, we will now hear your closing statement.
Thank you. So what do I have to offer to the role of judicial court judge? Well, I can tell you that I've been a trial attorney for 24 years. I've been entrusted by 3 different state attorneys to handle some of the most serious, complex criminal cases within our circuit. I have also been entrusted to not only handle the serious crimes against children or women and children, also to be the supervisor of that unit for a decade. That's important, I think, because that touches, just that issue touches so many different areas. It touches criminal law. It touches marriage cases. It touches dependency cases. It touches juvenile law. It touches civil law. It touches all of that. And I can tell you, I believe that's why I have the support of various members of Alachua County. I have the support of Sheriff Clovis Watson Jr. I have the support of former State Senator Rod Smith, former Chief Assistant Jeannie Singer, former State Attorney Bill Cervone, former Director Carol Zagel, and current Chief Assistant Heather Jones. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your answer. Thank you, candidates, for participating in our forum this afternoon. This concludes the 8th Judicial Circuit Group 12 panel. Will the candidates for County Commission Districts 1, 2, and 4 please approach the table?